Intimacy, eros, and what we rarely tell. It's a reckoning with the real, where breath meets bone, where truth undresses us and gasps seep through the cracks. We're not here to behave. We're here to feel, to experience, to grow and expand, not at the convenience of others. It's for the parts of you that have been silenced, ache, grieve, pulse, remember, and forget. We strip it all back. The shame, the scripts, the performative sex and performative self. We speak the unspoken. We get intimate, not just with bodies, but with truth. Gritty and soul-bearing.
Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
And welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I am Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm going to start this episode off with a quote that goes with what we're going to be talking about. And it goes like this: one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that's Carl Jung. And Jung is pointing at something most of us would rather avoid. The path doesn't run through the light we imagine. It runs through the dark we won't look at. And the darkness rarely announces itself as darkness. It shows up as a reaction that's far bigger than the moment it caused. I've been sitting with my own triggers lately, and instead of managing them or explaining them away, I got really curious and I followed one all the way down. And what I found waiting there wasn't a flaw or a defect, it was a guard. Something that has been standing watch over an old wound for a very long time and doing exactly the job it was built for. I even had a name. And once I was willing to give it one, it took it on. And then I did something that felt really uncomfortable at first, but it turned out to be one of the most intimate things I've done. I introduced it to Jacqueline. So today, the two of us want to go into this together. What is the trigger actually pointing at? And why is the reaction always bigger than the moment? Who are these protectors that show up for us? And what exactly are they guarding? Is a protector an enemy to be defeated or something to be met, named, and thanked? And what happens to a relationship when you introduce yours to the person you love? So all this and more in the next hour. And for live viewers, we'll take questions in the second half. So put their questions in the chat or call in at 1-800-930-2819.
Thanks, Chris. So we're shifting gears a little bit on this call because we spent a lot of time focused on me and exploring those places where I get vulnerable and come to you. And this time, the experience was entirely different. And I remember you coming to me a few weeks ago and telling me that you had had a conversation that had really left you with wanting to have a discussion with me when I was ready, and that you had found something really important through that conversation that you wanted to share. And then we got on a plane and we had a little time together. Oh, yeah. And you introduced me to what you were just speaking about, which is the name of the guard that you had come to see. And as you said earlier, there was something incredibly intimate that showed up through that conversation, and an awareness on both of our parts that we had just touched something really important in terms of relationship. And so you decided to be maybe a little more vulnerable on this podcast and share some of what that was about for you. So do you want to introduce us to what you figured out or what you found?
Yeah, I'm not sure I figured anything out, but yeah, what I was trying to discover. But I got laughing there because I'm recognizing that's a great strategy. If I want to talk to you something where you can't leave, I should wait till you get on a plane.
Yeah.
For listeners out there, great strategy.
Except our plane ride was only just over an hour, so you didn't have much time.
Perfect.
And there were some free seats, actually.
All joking aside, Maybe I'll back up, and as we get into this, just what the impetus was for me to start exploring this. Um, Done lots of work on myself over the last several years, and some of the stuff we've shared on this podcast. And I don't get triggered a lot anymore. I mean, I'm human; I get triggered, but it's not as nearly as frequent as it used to be. Say even 5 or 6 years ago. And I started noticing, particularly in this past year, that the triggers I was having had a certain flavor to them. They were generally around the same thing. And the catalyst for me, my aha moment going, you know what, I actually want to look into this a little more, was I was reading this book recently called Resurrecting Jesus by Adyashanti. And in this book, one of the things he's talking, it's a metaphysical look at the teachings of Jesus, which I'm a big fan of. And I'd never read this author before. I found his stuff fascinating. But something he talked about in there was one of the things to understand about the Jesus story is nobody understood him, including like his disciples. He was just this guy that was constantly misunderstood. I don't think I'm that character. And I only bring it up because that when I read that, that's when this light bulb went off my head. Oh, that's my trigger. My trigger is when I'm feeling not understood, particularly by people that I love and I care about, that I desperately want them to understand me. And I've sort of replayed the last sort of year in my mind and just thought of all these altercations I have where I was triggered and dysregulated. And yeah, it all had these roots of not being understood. I was trying to get something across or say something. I was feeling really misunderstood. And as a result, I would go into this sort of, dark mode, I'll call it for now. So I wanted to understand this a bit more. So I reached out to, the therapist.
For one sec, actually,
yeah, please.
Before you keep going. So when you speak to this idea of going into this dark mode, what does that mean?
That's a great question. So my triggered state, which I call dark mode sometimes, first thing I notice is my breath gets shallower. I start to feel even more disassociated from my body. And then I take on a bunch of character traits, which are I tend to get a little bit mean. I tend to get a little bit short. I tend to get a little patronizing and a little bit cold. And part of me just wants to get out of there. And so I'm using all these things as a way to sort of end the conversation and move on. So that's my dark mode.
Okay.
Great question. Thanks. And so I reached out to my therapist and said, hey, listen, I want to explore this thing, but I want to explore it in a different way. It's like, I know the origin of this thing. I've explored that to death. I've looked at the origin stories of these various, trauma, for lack of a better word, I had. I don't want to go back there and explore this thing. I want to come at this a different way because I want to understand, why is this one still showing up? The other ones seem to have faded away. The other ones that have come from these origin stories don't really show up in the same way, but this one just seems to be so acute. I want to come at this a different way.
And when you say this one, you're talking about this wound of feeling misunderstood. Yes?
Yeah. Whatever's behind that that's leading to this is the one that keeps persisting, even though I can point at it and say, well, I can really see where that came from. I can really see in my childhood where that shows up. I can name a number of events. I can play it over, but why does it keep showing up? And she had this idea of, let's come at it a different way. Let's think of it differently. Let's think of this as it's a guard or protector that's showing up. Can you describe it? And much in the same way I described it now, it's like I described it in terms of, it's cold, it's patronizing, it's controlling, it's a little bit mean. Okay, well, let's give it a name. Like, what does it sound like? Is it the analyst? Is it the hero? Is it the sacrifice of the lawyer? And boom, yep, the lawyer. That's exactly what it is. It wants to prosecute the case. It wants to win. It wants to have its case heard, and it wants the case to shut and move on with the victory. That's exactly what's showing up. And it's so the opposite of the character I want to play and who I want to be. I don't want to be that character, but that's the character that's showing up. And so and then within this further conversation about, she recommended, what would it be like to introduce this protector to Jacqueline? And that's where we ended up, on a plane, meeting the lawyer.
So I think I want to take us a step back, because the lawyer you refer to it as a guard or a protector, is managing something.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that character, for lack of a better word, shows up to manage something that's pretty deep, which for you, as you described it, was a wound of feeling not understood. Yes.
Yes.
And so it serves the purpose of protecting that or guarding that emotion from actually being exposed, both to you and to those around you. Right?
Correct.
And so knowing that I knew the wound, why was introducing me to the lawyer so important?
I'm not sure I use the word important. I wasn't sure. It was a suggestion. Where I could see it as being potentially helpful is the way I introduced it in this sense. Hey, I'm coming to terms with this thing. I've named this thing. And when it shows up, I'm asking your help to identify it with me. So we can name it together, we can see it together. And within that, maybe we can co-create the management of this protector between the two of us, not just me on my own trying to do it on my own on myself, but can we both work together to help me manage this protector in a way that works better for me and for our relationship.
So you took that way further than I expected you to.
Right.
You're catching me off guard a little bit now. But what I'm hearing in that, and what I really felt in that conversation, was I'm aware that there is a part that I play when a really big trigger shows up for me. And I want to expose both why it's showing up and what it looks like so that you and I can figure things out together. Yes?
Totally. Yeah. And it's really specific to situations that, again, it's not something that like, I think the event is not being understood, but the wound lies belief that, like, I'm more than happy to be not understood by almost everybody. And there's lots and lots of people out there that understand me. I don't care if they do. It's not necessary. I'm fine with it. But it does matter when it's you. It's my father. It's our kids. That's when all of a sudden the event of not being understood drives deeper into something like a fear of rejection, that dives deeper into something like, I'm not safe here. I'm not safe. I need to do something about this, but only with people that I have this very strong, loving relationship with. Nobody else. It doesn't show up anywhere else. And that's why it's so critical to deal with you.
Why do you think that is, that it doesn't show up with anybody else? Why does it only show up with the people that are closest to you?
I think it feels very tribal for me. It really does feel like I'm comfortable and feel safe in my family unit and my close tribe. I don't feel a need to belong in any way to some bigger tribe, but that safety is important. If I'm guessing at why that is.
And so when you shared that with me, what happened for you in that moment? I can share what happened for me, but I'm curious just to keep eyes on you for a little bit, or ears on you for a little bit. What happened for you in speaking to the characteristics of the lawyer?
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, like, the first thing I had to overcome was my fear of being misunderstood. Right? Like talking about my fear of being misunderstood, I had a fear of being misunderstood in this whole thing. Was I going to be able to articulate it in a way that was going to be helpful, or was I going to say it in a way that would trigger you? All these things are going through my mind. So I had a bit of anxiety and apprehension in even doing that, because the fear the doing it was the fear itself. So that's part of what I had to overcome.
And so just staying with you for now,
Yeah.
how did you manage that fear? How did you find the courage to recognize that that was there for you and to step into the conversation anyways?
Predominantly because it wasn't my own idea. And this sounds counterintuitive. Is this like I'd gone through I'd gone through the process of I've identified something, and instead of saying I'm going to try to find us, I'm going to try to intellectualize a solution for it. I reached out into the universe, in this case through a therapist, and asked for guidance. And when that guidance came through, it felt like it was coming from a higher place. And so that in itself gave me sort of the courage or the faith to like I'm gonna this is a fear, but I'm going to push through it. I feel it's coming from that place. And
And
anytime I've done that in the past, it's always had a good outcome.
okay. And just so our listeners are clear, because I think this piece is important, it's not because it came from a therapist that you felt comfortable
No.
speaking to. It's because what came from the therapist felt really aligned with what was true for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And again, it's a thing I'll say. It didn't come from me, right? It didn't come from my thinking and my own conditioning that was also intertwined in this fear itself.
Okay. And so I just want to speak to what it feels like a little bit on the receiving end of the introduction to this conversation, because I think, well, I know it's really important, which is when Chris came to me with this, he came to me with vulnerability. I've been exploring this with my therapist, and she recommended that we explore it together. Would you be willing to have a conversation? So already he had set me up in a place where my heart was open, right? I wasn't defended. I wasn't ready to attack. I was ready to listen because something was really important to him. And as it started, and he shared some of this piece around not being understood, a part of what happened for me was a deep desire to understand, which was then to ask a bunch of questions. Right? And I say that because when we, in relationship, whether it's friendship or it's partners, when even with our kids, when we come together to have important conversations, whatever we can do to create an arena that feels safe and disarming is going to make these conversations so much easier. If Chris is coming to me with, there's something really important and deep that I want to explore, will you give me your listening and have a conversation about it? I'm going to be much more responsive than the lawyer showing up, letting me know that I didn't understand him. And for all of these reasons, X, Y, and Z are going to happen. You're not going to get the same response. And so I'm sharing that because I think the setup is actually really important. Lots of people often say to us, well, that's great. You guys have this kind of relationship, but what happens when that kind of relationship isn't there? Well, the setup is really important because it creates the potential for deeper listening and communication. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would even go further and say the setup wasn't performative in the sense that some can be. Is like with all authenticity, I'm recognizing this trigger resides in me from something from my experience, my path that's then getting projected onto you when this happens. So I was legitimately saying, I want to explore this thing that's in me. There's no part, the performative vulnerability. It was true.
And my intention wasn't to say it was performative. It was just to set things up because we're often asked, well, how do you do that? Well, this is a piece of how we can do that. For you, it was natural, but in many situations, especially as we move into conversations that are really vulnerable or can be really heated, the setup is actually really important.
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then just to, yeah. And I think the point I didn't make the point well. The point I was making is you actually have to believe you want to do this work yourself,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
You're actually looking to change something within you, not the other person. And you got to be legitimate about that.
Absolutely. So, what did it feel like for you ultimately to share what the lawyer looked like and how he showed up and how you wanted partnership around meeting him when he showed up?
Yeah. I mean, much like you alluded to, your response to it was so open and so willing and so curious that it immediately any anxiety or fear I had around discussing this went away. And then in that moment, for sure, it just felt like, oh, I'm like, it's almost like I'm dropping this sort of weight I've been carrying around without even knowing it. This character, this protector we call the lawyer, uh, is now not hiding somewhere in me that emerges in the relationship once in a while. This lawyer is now part of the relationship. This lawyer has come in. He's been identified. He's been introduced, and I'm sure he'll be back. But the context that he'll come back in will be very, very different, and we can then work together to understand what's the lawyer protecting, what's actually going on. I don't have to do it alone. I can do it with you in the sort of this union. So it creates a tremendous sense of relief in dropping this weight, relief in overcoming the fear of discussing something that feels very personal, and then finally, just as it all settles in, uh, this forward-looking view that has even more peace in it.
And I'd just say on my end, you spoke about when you get triggered, and we should come back to have a conversation about triggers in general.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
when you get triggered, some of the behaviors or attitudes or whatnot that show up are cold, they're patronizing, they're mean. Um, and what happened for me in that conversation, when I was able to meet this character that you describe as a lawyer, what I was able to actually understand is, oh, okay. So when these qualities start to show up, they're showing up to protect a place that feels very vulnerable. And if I can actually hear that the lawyer is showing up, then I know that my husband is feeling really vulnerable. And rather than react to the lawyer, I can respond to the part that feels rejected or misunderstood and engage with that part so that the lawyer can quiet. And that's in terms of relationship dynamics, that's huge
Mm-hmm.
because that means that my protector doesn't have to wake up and start reacting to yours, but I can actually stay in a place that's centered in my heart and meet you from that space.
Yeah, and you asked me a great question as we were going through this. What is it you would like from me in those moments? And I had to sit with it for a while. And then it came to me. Um, I'd like you to, and give you permission to ask me in those moments, Chris, are you feeling misunderstood right now? And that becomes a, we've an agreed upon, discourse or phrase that can de-escalate the situation. Because in the moments it's happening, I don't know what's happening. But by pointing it out, I can say, oh, maybe that's what's going on here. And it just changes the trajectory of everything. It lowers the temperature.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want to go back a little bit and speak a little bit about triggers and protectors in general?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
lead you. You want to take us off?
I'll lead you to a little bit here. So, how would you describe a trigger? What is a trigger?
A trigger is something that sets off my nervous system. So I would say that a trigger can be, it depends actually. It can be if I've slept well, I've eaten well, and I'm feeling good. Somebody dropping a glass of orange juice on my lap, I might laugh at.
Hmm.
If I haven't done those things, a glass of orange juice dropping on my lap could be a trigger. And I say it like that because a trigger itself, by definition, is something that sets our nervous system off. But the trigger may vary depending on where our nervous system actually sits in any given moment. So if I'm not feeling well, or I haven't slept well, or I'm struggling with something, I'm going to be more easily triggered into a state of arousal than I would be if I had slept well and I'd been taking care of myself. Things will just sort of roll off my back. But if that's not the case, I'm going to get reactive. And reaction in my body looks like my heart starts to race. I start to feel hot. I feel like I have to defend myself, or I can move into attack. Sometimes I move into wanting to shut off the world and totally be by myself. I know that my most natural response to getting triggered is to put up a nice big wall with my heart. What does getting triggered look like for you?
Before we go there, I want to ask you. That was really interesting. You mentioned the sort of the nervous system aspect of the trigger, and so in certain states of the nervous system, the triggers are more easily activated or triggered. Take me to a place where you've got enough sleep, you're fully fed, everything, you meditate and whatnot, and then you're triggered. Is there a different depth of trigger that we're talking about? It sounds like there's a sort of higher level superficial trigger. Can there be something deeper?
Sure. And I mean, I think that what you're guiding me to is to that place where something that doesn't want to be exposed gets exposed. So when you speak to that, I would say, yeah, if something happens that elicits shame, feelings of rejection, feelings of grief, deep loneliness, questions of my own self-worth, deep fear, the response is going to be entirely different. And what's going to happen, in my experience, is that all the protectors and guards that have shown up to protect me first from experiencing emotions that were too hard for me to experience are going to rally, and they're going to surround that feeling with as much of their energy as they can to protect me from having to feel that shame. Let's just say, as an example. And so what will happen is my response will be to project outward so that what I'm hiding inside doesn't have to be felt first by me and then seen by anyone around.
Yeah.
It
does. And it sounds like, it just sounds like things that are coming from your past and your experience are the things that are being triggered in one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that when our wounds get triggered, an entirely different level of trigger shows up. But both of them are triggering our nervous systems, and they're triggering our nervous systems into a level of arousal, which, when those things get triggered, can move into a level of hyperarousal, which has us behave and do things in ways that are really out of alignment with who we want to be. And I think it's time for us to take a break. So how about we come back to that after the break?
That sounds good. See you in a minute.
Let your dreams and not your doubts drive your decisions. Often, like 99.9% of the time, it will require you to stretch yourself into unknown territory. But that, my friend, is how you grow. You are making decisions all day long. Decisions about what to eat, what to wear, who to call. Decisions about how to spend your time and who to spend it with. Or how to spend your money and what to spend it on. If just for today, you stopped before every decision and checked in with yourself and let your dreams lead the way, what would change and what could be possible for you? I'm Beth Larson, host of the Flourish Frequency Show. Join me every third Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, or visit my website, bethlarsoncoaching.com, for archive shows and more information to tune you into your personal Flourish frequency.
And we are back. Before the break, we were just starting to dive into triggers a little bit and talked about, all triggers ultimately, I'm going to paraphrase, are, it's our nervous system being activated. Some of them are potentially, more superficial, that are related to the amount of sleep we've got, what's happening right now in the moment, our anxiety, but some of them run much deeper. And these are the ones that are coming from potentially some of our own personal woundings, and it's where the protectors remain hidden. If I take us there, Jacqueline, what are some kind of the wounding that leads to triggers and protectors? What do we mean by that?
Well, I think, and we might be seeing this differently, but I think that the wounding itself is the trigger. So something triggers that wound into our awareness. I think I'd describe it this way. We have the big S, self. How we identify ourselves when we're at our best and we're calm and we're curious and we're present, and many other qualities. And then we have these places where parts of us get activated. Wounded parts of us get activated. And when those pieces of us get activated, something else shows up entirely. And it's then that those, in IFS, we call them managers. In your language and in the language of your therapist, we're calling them protectors and guards. But essentially they are, it's the bouncer that's showing up to protect the heart. Am I answering your question or not quite?
Yeah, and I'm just sitting with it. So, in an external event happens, and it triggers. It's the trigger for activating some part of us that has been wounded in the past, that's now being pulled into the present. Is that sort of what you're saying here?
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak it in a way that I understand it in this moment, and I could probably hold it in many different ways at different times. But essentially, in our active experience, in what's happening in our day-to-day life, when something triggers us, it's almost as if that part that gets triggered pushes our big ass self out of the picture. And all of a sudden, what we're interacting with is a trauma part, a wounded part, a core wound that's showing up with all of its own qualities, that's rooted in the past. And what happens when it comes present and pushes the main personality out of the way is that we stop acting like ourselves. We don't have access to the same parts of ourselves anymore. What we have access to is this wounded piece.
Yes. And the protector that's coming to take over to make sure that it's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So my example where I started with this, I have this not being understood by certain people becomes this triggering event that brings in the protector. And the protector is coming in because there's a part of me that's now feeling fears being abandoned. It doesn't think it's safe. So it's starting to take over to create the safety that it wants for the environment.
It shows up in order to protect the little boy from having to experience the level of terror that he would experience if rejection and the fear of rejection and abandonment were to completely take over.
Yeah.
And so the manager comes to be a buffer for the ego so that it doesn't have to experience that.
Yes. And if I think about you, before I sort of took us back into triggers, you're asking about some of mine, and I talked about this this particular one of not being understood. But if I go back a few years, one of my main ones, which had been hidden for a very long time for me, was a need to control my environment and everything around. And I'd sort of, without unwittingly, set up my life controlling everything, right? That was the way I felt safe. There's something within me from my childhood that said, listen, you're not safe unless you're in control of your environment. And as life happens, you're not really ever in control of my environment. I never was. I think I was under this illusion. And as my environment started getting less and less controller, not only did my protectors show up, but I think in IFS they call it the firefighter shows up.
Yeah.
And the firefighter will do whatever it takes to put out that fire, including taking the building to the ground, covering everything with water, destroying everything to put it out. And that's what happened to me. And it's like it happens to many people that go through things like addiction or whatnot. The firefighters come in and burn it, and that gets burnt to the ground in that process.
And I'm so happy that you brought up the idea of addiction there, because really what the firefighters are doing is when that core wounding or that deep fear, the deep shame, the fear of abandonment, rejection, whatever it looks like, starts to poke through, and it's not protected enough by the manager, the firefighters are going to show up to try and calm it down. And this is so primal. Like, our brains are programmed to move toward pleasure and away from pain. And so this is like, this is a primal piece within us. And in order to be able to tap into or break free of the shackles that we put on ourselves, at some point in our lives, we are going to have to take a look at the core wounds that are actually driving everything we do. And this is what we're talking to. So you were talking about Jung's quote at the beginning, and it's in those dark places that we find freedom, because it's in actually embracing and meeting with, sitting with that fear of rejection, of abandonment, of shame, whatever it is, that we're able to actually alchemize it into something that's no longer having us turn away, but rather has us turn toward ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah, and you think of the process, or you want to say more there before I go in?
But yeah, I was just going to say, and the beauty of what you and I did, thank you to your therapist for that guidance, is that we don't have to look at these pieces of ourselves alone. And when we're able to expose these places within us to the people that we really love, rather than hiding in shame, we're actually able to meet each other in these places and invite, as you invite me into that place in you, it gives me permission to say, hey, you know what? I have a core wound too. And my protector or manager looks like a people pleaser.
Mm.
So when you see me doing X, Y, and Z, can you call me into what might be lying underneath it, which might be a fear of rejection,
Right.
right? And then as we communicate like that, we get to see that we're actually all operating in very similar ways, working so desperately to protect places in ourselves that actually are often mirrored to us in our lives by people we care about the most. And when we can do that, we can take like our boxing gloves off and start talking to each other's hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, and the key in there is like this isn't something that just you and I have. This is like the general human condition.
Yeah.
We're all composed of fears, limiting beliefs, protectors, firefighters. They all exist in there in some level or another.
And the whole goal is to find a way to integrate all of these parts of us
Yeah.
into the bigger S self, right? Which, when it's operating, we show up as creative beings. We show up with clarity and curiosity and compassion, rather than operating from these other places.
Yeah. And again, this idea that I was very motivated to want to look into this because I've looked into so much of this in the past, and I know it comes out on the other side of this. The more you integrate the darkness or the protector or understand the wounds and the fears, the more freedom that exists on the other side of that doorway. And so when I kept noticing, and it's not very often I'm triggered, but it seems to be the same thing. Well, here's my choice. I can go out there and try to make sure everyone understands me, which is impossible because I have no control over how other people's brains work or how they see me. Or I can do the work and I can try to pull into the light the thing in me that is being protected or being hidden from me. And from that, my belief was I'll even get a greater sense of freedom on the other side. So much of the 12 steps, for example, is exactly that. Someone comes into a program because effectively they've been using drugs or alcohol or something to manage your central nervous system. They have taken that on as their protector. I can't, these feelings are overwhelming for me. I can't handle it. So I'm going to numb them out with all these various things. And then you come into sobriety and they're all gone. That's not part of the program anymore. No drugs, no alcohol, no other coping mechanisms. And that's the place where you also need to surrender this idea that you know how to go and control the environment to make it work for you, because that's not worked. And you go in this full surrender. And the very first thing that happens is you go and try to look at the pieces that you've hidden in the dark and bring them into the light and try to integrate them, much like we're talking about here.
So I'm just going to break that down one more time, okay? Because the language, the language is important. So you come into a program, and what you recognize is first, the firefighters need to be called down.
Yeah. At that point, the firefighters are now running your life.
And so the firefighters are forced to the side
Mm-hmm.
as sobriety is called forward. Right? So I can't mask with drugs and alcohol anymore,
That's
or scrolling, whatever. I mean, whatever the addiction looks like, it's put to the side, which
Mhm.
then means that I'm actually forced to experience the protectors. And so
Yes.
for you, in your example, one of those protectors was a controller.
Yeah.
In your example with me, it's the lawyer.
Hmm.
But your controller showed up really loudly for you.
Yeah. The controller and the achiever.
Okay. So the controller and the achiever shows up really loudly. And neither of them really matter so much in the realm of getting sober. What happens is you start to see how they play themselves out,
Hmm.
but they're not the answer. The answer lies beneath the behaviors that you've learned in order to protect what feels like, it's the center of the center, and you're protecting it with your life. But the only way into healing as you move through sobriety is to have to look at what it was you've built a life protecting.
Yeah.
And what you're speaking to is the center of the wound, right? And as we've spoken about so many times, there isn't one of us that goes through life without having a wound. How it shows up in our lives is totally dependent on all kinds of circumstances. But the wound itself is common to all of humanity, is it
Yeah.
not?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all part of our unique upbringing, our unique family situation, unique societal situation. And it's all a collection of belief systems and fears. And
And it
each one is a
exists,
different one. That's it.
and it exists across time and space and
Yeah.
across cultures. We all have an adventure to go on in this lifetime, right? And that adventure is really to the center of ourselves.
Yeah.
And freedom and all of the movies that we watch about the hero, freedom ultimately looks like making our way to the center of that center and not turning away.
And as Young quotes says again, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light. It's not about love and light, but by making the darkness conscious. And if you can journey to that center, again, it's not about identifying, here's the light there. It's like, I need to pull this darkness. I want to pull this darkness into the light. I want to see what the hidden and rejected parts of me, what they are, what they've been doing, and how they've been playing a part in my life. I want to make them conscious. Because if I don't, I'll call them fate. And it's not fate. It's the belief system that we have the key to unlock if we're going to pull them into the light.
So it's interesting, I just thought of something and I had never thought of this before. Is it's not actually that these places inside of us are dark. It's
No.
that we pushed them into the
Yeah.
darkness to
Yes.
not look at them. But they're no more light or less, like they're no less light than all the rest of us. They're just the parts of us that we have relegated to the shadows.
You said such an important thing there. I got the tingles when you said it because that's real point clarification. These aren't the good parts and the bad parts. These are just the parts. And I even go further. Those parts of us that have been in the dark that may be obscured from ourselves, we needed them to survive. One way or another, they've gotten us here. And this isn't about vilifying them, making them bad, rejecting them. We've been doing that our whole lives. That's why they're hiding. They're hiding because they feel they'll be vilified, rejected. And it's bringing them out to life and looking and say, okay, the lawyer, there you are. Thank you. I understand the role you've been playing my entire life. And there may be still some need for you, but you can sort of stand down now. I see you. I thank you. I integrate you. I love you. But you don't have to hide anymore. Just be out in the open.
So I want to qualify something there because it sounds like maybe I'm misunderstanding you, or maybe our language is just a little off, which is the lawyer itself isn't hiding. The lawyer actually has learned how to be quite present. What's hiding is what the lawyer's protecting.
Right.
What's hiding is the shame. What's hiding is a little boy or a little girl who feels like if they actually show themselves with all of their vulnerability, they're just going to be rejected. And so it's those places. The lawyer's been protecting that. And it's those places that need to be exposed into the light. And when they do, the lawyer can stand down because the lawyer no longer needs to show up to protect that peace anymore.
Yeah, and I think it might be a little bit of both. And absolutely, the wounding and the fears are hidden. The lawyer, I would call the lawyer like an in between. Until I went through this exercise, if you ask me, is there a lawyer that shows up? I'd be like, no, I'm just, I don't even realize I'm out of character yet. I've hidden that from myself. I look for it and said, oh yeah, it's like I'm Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in these situations. Now I see it. Now I see it. Now I can befriend it. But until that point, until I've been looking for it and open to it, I don't see it.
Yep, I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
You're right. It is both. And so, yes, I got it. Thank you for that clarification.
I just thought of it now. So
When you recognize that that's a part of you, right? This part of me shows up, and this part of me is a lawyer. How does recognizing that
because I believe it's a great question. I believe it's the conditioned part of me, but it's not me. What I am is like, as we talk about, is that the self with the capital S, or that authentic self that has a way of being. And this is part of the smaller self, the conditioned ego, that plays a different role. And the conditioned ego isn't who I am, even though I may have tried to identify with it. It's not who I am, and it's very malleable and very changeable. And you can certainly minimize the impact it has because it is a survival mechanism, not a thriving mechanism. That's why I say it's a part, because it may no longer be needed, but it's actually not who I am.
And I think that in both in our own individual awareness and then in our collective awareness, and when I say collective, I mean you and I in this moment, when we can own that this is a part of me, we'll use the lawyer again.
Yeah.
The lawyer is a part of me, but it isn't all of me. And its purpose here is a survival instinct, which means that I'm in distress.
Yes.
So when this part of me shows up that makes you want to run in the other direction, recognize that I'm in distress. I'm not myself right now. And can you meet me in the distressed place instead of reacting to the protector itself?
Yes.
And that, we got to see how powerful that was in our interactions, and we meet each other in these places all the time. And we've done this work for a long time, and we're still learning and growing in this work. The idea of, for all of you listening, to be able to recognize that if somebody you love, even if somebody you care about, is operating in ways that are not aligned with who you know them to be, then most likely their system is in distress and they're working to protect something that they don't know how to manage, or that they've learned how to manage, by controlling their environment or by pleasing or by doing a number of other behaviors. But they're not doing it because they want to be. And when we can have compassion for each other in those moments, our conversations can change dramatically. Because if one person in a relationship is able to recognize that the other person has been triggered, then that person can hold a steady heart-centered space instead of one that also gets defended or wants to attack. And we can meet each other in a much different way.
Yeah. And it's, in a sense, and you alluded to it earlier, it's what the protector is doing is protecting you from feeling the feelings associated with what's happening, is it thinks you can't survive it. For whatever reason, it doesn't differentiate between what's psychological and what's real. It just thinks you can't survive this. This is too much. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to distance you from it and prevent you from having to feel those feelings. And as you said, if you're this is why it's such powerful partner work. Because as you and your partner get to know each other and you recognize the protector comes up and you don't get triggered by the protector, which is a big deal, then you can say, I'm here to feel these feelings with you. I am, in our case, I am sensing you're feeling misunderstood. Let's sit with this together. We don't need to run from it. And then the alchemy happens in there. And if we both get triggered, this is a rule Jacqueline and I have. We're pretty good at following, not all the times, but if we recognize we're both triggered, let's just stop the conversation and go somewhere else, because it will never go anywhere productive.
And then you come back. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But so just recognizing, just as an example before we end today, how does the protector show up for you? For Chris, it looks like a controller. For me, it looks like a people pleaser. For a dear friend of mine, it looks like perfectionism. It could look like
the achiever.
The achiever. Hypervigilant.
The hero.
Yeah, all of them. How does it show up for you? And what would happen if you named it in relationship? And let us know. If you play around with it, let us know what shows up. And please, if you do this, do your best to choose somebody who feels safe to you so that you can explore this with curiosity.
Perfect. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Have a good one, everybody.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.